There's a fire burning in your chest right now. You feel it when someone cuts you off in traffic, when your partner says the wrong thing, when life refuses to bend to your will. You call it anger, but that's too simple. It's a sickness, a parasite that's eating you from the inside out, and you've been feeding it your entire life. But what if I told you that 2,000 years ago, a Roman philosopher dissected this disease like a surgeon, identified every symptom, every trigger, every lie it tells you, and then he gave us the cure? Lucius Aeneas Seneca wasn't just some academic theorist. He was the advisor to Nero, one of history's most violent emperors. He walked through the halls of power where one wrong word could mean execution, where rage was currency and blood was cheap. And in that environment, he wrote the most devastating takedown of anger ever created. Not because he was peaceful by nature, but because he understood that anger is a form of temporary insanity, and insane men don't survive in Rome. This is how one man stared into the face of humanity's ugliest emotion and walked away with the formula to kill it forever. And now, you're going to learn what he knew. 1. Anger is madness wearing a crown. Let's start with what Seneca actually said. Not the watered-down version you see on Instagram. The raw truth. Anger is a brief madness. Read that again. Not a justified response. Not a natural emotion. Madness. Temporary insanity. When you're angry, you're not yourself. You're not in control. You're possessed by something that makes you stupid, reckless, and weak. Think about the last time you exploded. What did you say? What did you do? Now imagine someone recorded it and played it back for you. You'd be embarrassed, horrified, because that wasn't you. That was the madness talking. Seneca watched this happen in the Roman court constantly. Powerful men, brilliant men, reduced to screaming children because someone insulted them. He watched emperors order executions over trivial slights. He watched friendships destroyed, families torn apart, empires weakened, all because someone couldn't control the fire for 5 seconds. And here's what terrified him most. People thought anger made them powerful. They thought rage was strength. They thought exploding meant you were passionate, alive, dominant. But Seneca saw the truth. Angry men were predictable, controllable, easy to manipulate. If he wanted to destroy a rival in Nero's court, he didn't need poison. He just needed to make them angry. Because angry men make mistakes. Angry men show their hand. Angry men give away their power for free. You think anger protects you. It betrays you. You think it makes you strong. It makes you a puppet. And the strings are so obvious that even children can pull them. 2. The anatomy of the disease. Seneca didn't just say, don't be angry. He showed you exactly how anger works, step by step, like a physician diagnosing a plague. First comes the impression. Someone does something. Your boss criticizes you. Your friend betrays you. A stranger disrespects you. That's just data. Neutral information entering your consciousness. But then comes the poison. Your mind adds a story. This shouldn't have happened. I don't deserve this. They did this on purpose. They need to pay. That story, that interpretation, that's where anger is born. Not in the event. In your judgment of the event. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca's philosophical successor, understood this too. Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. But you're not stopping there. You're feeding it. You're rehearsing the offense. You're imagining what you should have said. You're building the case against them. You're justifying your rage. And with every repetition, the fire grows. This is the critical moment. Seneca called it the initial impression versus the full passion. If you catch it early, you can extinguish it. But if you feed it, if you let it grow, it becomes a wildfire that consumes everything. Think about how you nurture your anger. You tell your friends what happened, and with each retelling, you make it worse. You imagine future confrontations. You scroll through old messages looking for more evidence. You're not experiencing anger. You're cultivating it. You're watering a weed and then wondering why your garden is dead. 3. The lies anger tells you. Now here's where Seneca gets surgical. He identified every lie that anger whispers to justify itself, and he tore them apart one by one. Lie number 1. I have to get angry or they'll walk all over me. Seneca's response. The greatest remedy for anger is delay. You don't need rage to set boundaries. You need clarity. Calm men are far more terrifying than angry ones because you can't predict them. You can't manipulate them. When you explode, you've already lost. When you respond with cold precision, you've already won. Lie number 2. My anger is righteous. I'm angry because I care. Seneca would laugh at this. He'd say you're not angry because you care. You're angry because your ego is bruised. Because things didn't go your way. Because you feel powerless and rage gives you the illusion of control. If you actually cared, you'd respond with wisdom, not tantrums. Lie number 3. Some things deserve anger. This is the big one. The one that keeps you trapped. Seneca anticipated this argument and crushed it. He said even when anger seems justified, when someone has genuinely wronged you, getting angry doesn't help. It clouds your judgment. It makes you act stupidly. It gives them power over your emotional state. Justice doesn't require rage. Correction doesn't require rage. Protection doesn't require rage. You can respond to any situation with calm force, and you'll be infinitely more effective. But you won't, because anger feels good. It feels like power. It feels like you're doing something. And that feeling is the trap. For why you're actually angry, let's get personal now. Seneca would look at your life and ask you a hard question. Why are you really angry? Not the surface reason, the deep one. And here's what he'd find. You're angry because you have expectations you haven't earned. You expect respect, but you haven't built anything worth respecting. You expect loyalty, but you haven't been loyal. You expect life to be fair, but you've never done the work to make your life work. You expect people to act how you want, but you've never clearly communicated what you need. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Most of your anger isn't about what happened. It's about what you think it means. Someone ignores your text, and you're not angry about the text. You're angry because you decided it means they don't respect you. They're avoiding you. They're secretly plotting against you. But here's the brutal truth. They probably just forgot. They're not thinking about you at all. And your rage is about your insecurity, not their action. Seneca understood something most people never learn. The angrier you are, the weaker you are. Because anger is always about fear. Fear of being disrespected. Fear of losing control. Fear of being powerless. Fear of being wrong. And rather than face that fear, you weaponize it. You turn it into rage and throw it at the world, hoping the explosion will make you feel strong. But you don't feel strong. You feel exhausted, ashamed, empty, because deep down, you know the truth. You're not angry at them. You're angry at yourself, and you're too afraid to admit it. 5. The training ground. Seneca didn't just diagnose the problem. He gave you the cure, but it's not easy. It's not comfortable. It requires you to do something most people are too weak to do. Train yourself before the fire starts. Here's the practice. Every morning, Seneca would rehearse potential frustrations. He'd imagine his slave breaking his favorite cup, his friend betraying him, a stranger insulting him, and he'd practice his response. Not the explosion, the pause, the breath, the choice to let it go. He called this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. You think about what could go wrong, and you decide in advance how you'll respond. Because in the moment of provocation, you won't have time to think. You'll react, and your reaction will be whatever you've trained yourself to do. So if you've trained yourself to explode, you'll explode. If you've trained yourself to pause, you'll pause. Most people train themselves to be angry without realizing it. Every time you snap at someone, you're building that neural pathway. Every time you indulge in righteous rage, you're strengthening that pattern. Every time you rehearse what you should have said, you're practicing anger. Seneca would say, stop practicing the wrong thing. Start practicing the pause. Next exercise, when you feel anger rising, name it. Out loud if you can. I'm feeling angry right now because I expected something and didn't get it. Just naming it breaks the spell. It takes you out of the emotion and makes you the observer. And observers don't explode. They watch. They choose. They control. 6. The man who couldn't be provoked hears a story about Seneca that reveals everything. One day, a man insulted him viciously in public, called him a fraud, a hypocrite, a disgrace to philosophy. Everyone waited for Seneca's response. Seneca smiled and said, "I'm grateful. Now I know what people say when I'm not in the room." The man was furious. He wanted to fight. Seneca gave him nothing. No anger, no defense, no reaction, just calm acknowledgement. The man looked like a fool, because you can't fight someone who won't fight back. You can't provoke someone who has killed the part of themselves that responds to provocation. This is what Seneca trained himself to become. Unprovocable, not because he was naturally calm, but because he understood that every time you react, you give your power away. Think about the people who make you angry. Your mother-in-law, your coworker, that driver who won't use his turn signal. They have power over you, immense power. They can ruin your day with a word, a look, a gesture. And you let them. You hand them the remote control to your emotional state and then complain when they press the buttons. Seneca would say take the remote back, not by fighting them, by refusing to give them access, by building a fortress so strong that their provocations bounce off like pebbles against stone. How? By realizing something they'll never tell you in therapy. Most things that make you angry don't actually matter at all. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Does it matter? You'll forget it in an hour. Someone insults you online. Does it matter? They don't know you. Someone doesn't invite you to something. Does it matter? You have other things to do. 90% of your anger is about things that have zero impact on your actual life. But your ego can't tell the difference between a real threat and a perceived slight. So it treats everything like a life or death battle. And you spend your life exhausted from fighting wars that were never real. 7. Kill the ego, kill the anger. We've arrived at the core. The place where most people turn away because the truth is too sharp. Seneca knew it. Marcus Aurelius knew it. Every philosopher who ever studied anger knew it. Anger is ego in disguise. You don't get angry because the world is terrible. You get angry because your sense of self is fragile. Because you need the world to validate you, and when it doesn't, you rage. Someone disrespects you, and you explode. Not because disrespect is dangerous, but because your entire identity is built on other people's opinions. Someone challenges your ideas, and you get defensive. Not because your ideas are under attack, but because you think you are your ideas. Someone succeeds where you failed, and you feel bitter. Not because their success hurts you, but because you've tied your worth to external achievements. Seneca's solution was radical. Shrink the ego until there's nothing left to wound. He wrote, "If you live in harmony with nature, you will never be poor. If you live according to opinion, you will never be rich." What does that mean? It means stop building your identity on things you can't control. Other people's opinions, your job title, your bank account, your social status. Because every time you attach your worth to something external, you create a vulnerability, a place where anger can enter. Seneca practiced what he preached. He was one of the richest men in Rome, but he regularly gave away his wealth, slept on the ground, ate simple food, not because he hated luxury, but because he refused to need it. He was training himself to be immune. If you took away his money, he'd be fine. If you took away his position, he'd be fine. If you insulted him, ignored him, betrayed him, he'd be fine. Because his sense of self didn't depend on any of it. That's the secret. A man with no ego has nothing to defend. And a man with nothing to defend can never be made angry. 8. The final Roman lesson. Let me tell you how Seneca died, because it explains everything. Nero, his former student, ordered him to commit suicide. A political purge. A manufactured accusation. Seneca had spent years advising this emperor, trying to civilize him, guide him. And this was his reward. Death by decree. Most men would rage, would scream about injustice, would go down cursing the system that betrayed them. Seneca sat down with his friends, discussed philosophy, and calmly opened his veins. No anger, no bitterness, no desperate clinging to life, just acceptance. He had spent his entire life preparing for this moment, meditating on death, rehearsing loss, building a self that couldn't be shaken. And when the moment came, he was ready. This is the ultimate test of Seneca's philosophy. Can you face injustice without rage? Can you face loss without bitterness? Can you face your own death without anger at the universe? Most people can't. They die screaming, cursing, clinging, because they never trained. They never practiced. They never built the fortress. But Seneca did. And in his final moments, he proved something that most people will never understand. Freedom isn't getting what you want. Freedom is not needing anything so badly that losing it breaks you. That's what anger costs you. Your freedom. Every time you explode, you show the world what controls you. Every time you rage, you reveal your weakness. Every time you let someone make you angry, you admit they have power over you. 9. The modern epidemic. Now let's talk about you. Living in 2024, drowning in anger you don't even recognize. You're angry at politicians, angry at your job, angry at your body, angry at people on the internet you'll never meet, angry at traffic, algorithms, headlines, comment sections. You wake up angry. You scroll through anger. You go to bed angry. And you call this normal. Seneca would look at your life and see a plague victim, someone infected with a disease they've normalized. You think this is just how life is. This constant low-grade rage. This perpetual frustration. This simmering resentment that never quite boils over but never fully disappears. But it's not normal. It's a choice, a habit, a pattern you've repeated so many times it feels like your personality. Here's what Seneca would tell you. Your anger isn't about them. It's about you. It's about your expectations, your entitlement, your fragile ego, your desperate need for control. And until you face that, until you stop blaming the world and start examining yourself, you'll stay trapped. You'll keep feeding the fire. You'll keep exploding over things that don't matter. You'll keep giving your power away to anyone who knows which buttons to push. And years from now, you'll look back at your life and realize you spent most of it angry. At nothing, over nothing, for nothing. 10. The cure you're afraid to take. So here's your prescription, straight from Seneca's writings, no sugarcoating. First, accept that most things don't matter. Not in the cosmic sense. Not in the will this matter in 5 years sense. Accept it viscerally. Feel it. Let it sink into your bones until you stop reacting to every little thing like it's an emergency. Second, practice the pause. Between stimulus and response, there's a gap. That gap is where your freedom lives. Train yourself to find it, to live in it, to respond from that space instead of reacting from your wounds. Third, shrink your ego daily. Every morning, remind yourself, I am not my accomplishments. I am not other people's opinions. I am not my possessions. I am not my status. I am the awareness that watches all of these things. And that awareness cannot be insulted, threatened, or destroyed. Fourth, premeditate disaster. Imagine losing everything. Your job, your relationship, your health, your reputation. Imagine it vividly. Not to be pessimistic, but to be prepared. Because when you've already faced the worst in your mind, reality can't shock you into anger. And finally, remember death. Every single day, not morbidly, practically. You're going to die. Everyone you know is going to die. This whole circus is temporary. So why are you angry about traffic? Why are you raging over a comment someone made? Why are you destroying relationships over ego battles that won't matter when you're dust? Seneca knew that death was the great equalizer, the thing that made all anger look absurd. Because in the face of mortality, almost nothing is worth your rage. 11. The man anger can't touch. Imagine becoming this person. Someone walks into the room trying to provoke you, and they fail. Not because you're suppressing anything, because there's nothing to provoke. You've killed the part of yourself that needs to be right, needs to be respected, needs to win. Someone insults you, and you genuinely don't care. Not because you're pretending, but because you've stopped building your identity on their opinions. Someone betrays you, and you feel disappointment but not rage, because you never expected perfection from imperfect humans. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and you don't even feel the spark, because you've trained yourself to see it for what it is: meaningless noise in a chaotic world. This isn't suppression. This isn't pretending. This is actual freedom. The kind Seneca spent his life building. The kind that made him untouchable even in Nero's court. You become the person everyone else is afraid to be. Calm in chaos, clear in confusion, controlled in catastrophe. Not because nothing bothers you, but because you've decided that very few things are worth the cost of your peace. And that peace isn't something you find. It's something you build, brick by brick, choice by choice, moment by moment. Seneca built his over decades. You can start building yours today. 12. The choice in front of you, so here we are. You've learned what Seneca knew. That anger is madness. That it's fed by ego and fear. That it's a choice, not a reflex. That you can train yourself out of it if you're willing to do the work. Now you have to decide. Are you going to keep living as a puppet, strings pulled by every minor inconvenience and perceived slight? Or are you going to cut those strings? Are you going to keep feeding the fire, justifying your rage, telling yourself it's righteous? Or are you going to starve it until there's nothing left but ash? Are you going to keep reacting from your wounds? Or are you going to respond from your wisdom? This isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily practice, a moment-by-moment choice. Every time you feel that heat in your chest, you're at a crossroads. One path leads to explosion, regret, weakness. The other leads to pause, power, peace. Seneca walked the second path through one of history's most dangerous courts and died free. Not because he was lucky, because he trained, because he chose, because he understood something most people never learn. The only person who can make you angry is you, and the only person who can free you is you. The fire is in your chest right now. You can feed it or you can starve it. Choose wisely, because this choice is the difference between spending your life as a slave to every passing emotion or becoming the kind of person that even emperors can't break. If Seneca could face execution without rage, you can face your inbox without exploding. If he could watch his student become a tyrant and stay calm, you can handle criticism without crumbling. If he could die free, you can live free. The question is, will you? Asterisk, asterisk, don't just watch this and forget it. Use it. The subscribe button won't change your life, but the decision you make right now might. I'll see you in the next one. If you're ready to keep building the fortress,